past, now. Red presents another entry in our anthology of stories that need to be told. Catline. Tonight we pull back the veil on fear. Fear doesn't mean you're done. It means you've lived. Catline. Gage Rowan didn't set out to sail. He set out to breathe. There was something about the way Houston pressed in lately. The traffic, the job sites, the constantly shifting sands of permitting and financing. Gage was tired of building things that owned him by the time they were finished. He was an architect by training, a developer by force of will. He knew land, setbacks, variances, construction loans, bridge notes, and balloon payments. But he didn't know peace, not lately. It was a scouting trip to Austin that set it all off. He'd been looking for a second home near Lake Travis, a place with elevation, with air that moved differently than the muggy Gulf winds of Nassau Bay. But what he found wasn't a house. It was a 25-foot racing catamaran parked outside a sun-baked San Antonio home. Twin hulls, rigging curled like resting muscle, a note in the window. For sale, cash only, no calls after 6. The man who answered the door was well into his 70s, leathery skin, a sailor's squint. "She's fast," he said. "I used to race her when I was younger. Not for the faint-hearted. You ever sail a cat?" Gage shook his head. "Never sailed anything. Then she'll humble you fast or kill you slowly." He gave Gage one lesson. On a side cove of Lake Travis, the wind coming stiff off the hills, he showed him how the sails worked, how the hulls balanced, how to ride a flipped catamaran. Gage nodded, took mental notes, and paid cash. The boat had no name. He towed it back to Nassau Bay with the windows down, and something unnameable shifting in his chest, something hopeful, something he hadn't felt in years. The Nassau Bay Sailing Club was nothing like the glossy brochures of yacht clubs along the coastline. It was little more than a dock, a bulletin board, sun-bleached into obscurity, and a row of cracked plastic chairs. But it had water, and it had wind, and it had a slip for the boat. It was on a bay of sorts, to the Houston Ship Channel. Gage named it Catline, a nod to both the sailing world and the setback line he'd spent years arguing over with those city planners. It felt fitting, a boundary, a limit, a dare. He watched the others, men and women who moved like they'd been born with rudders in their hands. He watched how they launched, how they flipped and righted their boats, how they laughed and splashed in the water. The first few weeks, he launched at dawn, when no one was there to see him fail. He capsized constantly, got tangled in lines, lost a hat, got a sunburn that peeled like shame. But he learned, muscle by muscle, mistake by mistake. He kept a journal, sketched diagrams, watched YouTube videos, reread the old man's notes. After work, he'd come home, bypass the microwave dinner, and instead sit on the floor with a dry erase board diagramming tack maneuvers. Sailing became the only part of his day that didn't feel like a transaction. He stopped returning voicemails from investors. He let 3 calls from his loan officer go unanswered. He told himself he was researching, studying, building new skills. But truthfully, he was hiding, out there, on the water. He wasn't a developer. He wasn't a negotiator. He wasn't an asset manager or a builder with a pipeline. He was just a man in motion, carving quiet through salt and wind. By July, he was good enough not to be scared, and that was a mistake. It was a Sunday morning. Too quiet. The sky was a washed-out blue, and the wind was steady, but not hard. He launched alone. No destination in mind, just a need to move out and be free. The water pulled him past the cut, into the bay. He let the cat run, feeling the wind in the sail, the tension in the tiller, the thrill of speed. He didn't notice how far he'd gone. Not until he felt the hum, not heard, felt. It started as vibration, not sound, feel, like the bones in his legs shivering from the inside out. He looked up and saw it, a deep vibration in his ribs, a shift in the water, a presence behind him. A ship, not a boat. A ship, black, massive, a freighter, towering, a supertanker or a freighter. Impossible to tell. It moved like gravity, slow, massive, unturnable. He froze. It was coming fast. Unknowingly, he had sailed into the channel. The ship channel. The ship was closer now. It was closing in. So close, he could see numbers stenciled on the bow. Deck lights. A figure at the helm. Too small to change anything. Panic clamped down on his chest. He yanked the tiller. Oversteered. The sail flapped. The wind punched the wrong side, and the boat flipped. One moment he was upright. The next, he was underwater. Salt water in his mouth. Rope across his arms. Panic. He surfaced, coughing. The catamaran lay sideways, one hull in the air like a waving hand. The ship was closer now. Much closer. Too close. He swam to the righting line. Fumbled. Wrapped it around his shoulder. Braced his feet on the only visible side of a pontoon. The rest underwater. Pulled. Nothing. It was lying in the water like a wounded duck, wing flapping in the air. The horn blared, a sound that shook the air, the water, his soul. He pulled again, legs kicking, chest screaming. "Come on!" The boat rocked, moved, began to rise. He threw himself into it. The mast groaned, the sail lifted, and then the boat snapped upright. He hauled himself onto it, shaking, gasping. The ship now passing like a mountain beside him. Its wake hit like a slap. He lay there, eyes wide, soaked, silent. He cried. He didn't know why, just that it had been close. Closer than anything ever had. He imagined it could have pulled him under as it passed. He was that close to the hull. It was frightening. The silence afterward wasn't relief. It was a void. He had stared at death, and for the first time in years, he had actually thought about living. On shore, there had gathered a small crowd watching him as he approached. They didn't say anything, just watched and nodded as he pulled ashore and loaded his boat onto its trailer. He didn't sail for a week, didn't go near the marina, didn't speak of it, didn't sleep well. He would wake in the night, drenched in sweat, hearing the low blare of a ship's horn that wasn't there. When he finally returned, he didn't take out the boat, just sat on the dock, watched others. He called his mother, told her he loved her, wrote an email to an ex he hadn't spoken to in years. "I never said thank you for leaving. You saved us both." He hit send, then cried again. He started sailing slower, closer to shore, with a marine radio, a GPS. He started living slower too, said no to 3 WoW development deals that would have made him rich but miserable. Started sketching again, not blueprints, just shapes, ideas, things that felt like breathing. He volunteered at the club, fixed busted rudders, painted dock rails, started coaching kids. One teenager flipped 3 times in one day and almost quit. Gage waded out, chest deep, dragged him and the boat in and said, "You're not a sailor until you've flipped and come back." He began to feel human again. 2 years later, the club renamed the dock Rowan Basin. He hadn't asked for it, didn't even want it, but when they held the vote, the choice was unanimous. He sails a new boat now, but didn't get rid of Catline 1. His new boat was a little longer, he a little wiser, but the name is still Catline 2. Some things you don't change. He takes kids out sometimes, shows them how to rig, how to tack, how to ride a flipped cat. He doesn't tell them about the ship, not unless they ask. One did. "Were you scared?" Gage looked out at the water, then at the boy. "Yeah," he said, "but that's not what stayed with me." "What did?" Gage smiled. "What came after? Because some men only start living after they capsize. And some boats don't just float, they bring you back to yourself. One knot at a time." That fall, the air over Nassau Bay turned cool and forgiving. The breeze shifted from a heavy shove to a thoughtful pull, and the water, always unpredictable, grew quieter with the season. Gage took the catamaran out 3 times a week, sometimes alone, sometimes with a student, sometimes just to feel the wind speak to him in a language he still hadn't learned to translate fully. He had dreams now, not nightmares, but vivid, water-drenched dreams. Sometimes the freighter appeared again, and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes he was underwater, swimming towards something that looked like light. Sometimes he was back on shore, watching his younger self drift further into the channel, unable to call him back. He started journaling again, something he hadn't done since grad school. Not about real estate or architectural trends or construction delays. He wrote about the wind, the shape of waves, the way salt dried on his skin and made him feel like he belonged to something older than himself. The house in Lake Travis had to wait, but Gage still drove up every few months to walk the water's edge and sit under the tree where the old man had given him that first and only lesson. The house was still there, but the sailboat was long gone. What Gage realized, standing under that tree, was that the man hadn't sold him a boat. He'd sold him the edge he needed to fall off of, the one place where no blueprint could save him. One morning in late October, Gage took a call from an old friend from Houston, someone still building town homes and battling HOA boards. "You still in Nassau Bay?" the voice asked. "Yeah." "You still sailing that death trap every week? You ever coming back to the business?" Gage looked out his window at Cat Line, the sail covered, the deck glinting in the morning sun. "I am the business," he said quietly. Then he hung up. He went sailing. This time, he took the long way, past the markers, past the safe waters, right up to the edge of the channel. He paused there, let the boat drift. No ships, just sky and water. He whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular, "Still here." The boat rocked gently. Then, like always, the wind found him, and he sailed home. Because fear doesn't mean you're done. It means you've lived. It means you've flipped and pulled yourself back. And if you're lucky, if the futter gives you one more breath, you chart a new course. Not away from the channel, but straight through it, one knot at a time. You have been listening to Cat Line, produced and adapted for audio narration by Past Now Read. Stories that need to be told. Please subscribe and hit that bell for future updates. If you liked that story, stay tuned for the next. Follow for more. Please tag with someone who may like Past Now Read. Stories that need to be told. Thank you. All content and images are copyrighted by Fune House, LLC, 2025, all rights reserved.